Hello again. This is my intro before my intro. I am taping this after I have completed filming and editing my project bag tutorial. It is a long tutorial, much longer than I anticipated, so I'll try to make this mini intro brief. There were a few spots that the lighting was horrible. My hands were in the way of you seeing what I was sewing, especially when I stitched the first part of the zipper. However, hang in there because I got a much better camera view on the second part of stitching the zipper that hopefully will explain everything that I tried to explain in the first segment of the zipper sewing. This is what I made in the tutorial, the project bag that I made. It will fit. I've tested. It will fit. I believe this is an 11 by 8 Q-snap, and I have it going up and down by the 11 side, so it will fit in there that way, and obviously it will fit in going the landscape way. So an 11 by 11 should also fit. I've added my zipper pull, my little snowflake charm zipper pull. And the reason the video is so long is because I tried to base it on what a beginning sewer would, the information that they would need. So if you are an accomplished seamstress, this probably isn't a tutorial for you, but if you are a beginner, I hope that this will help you feel more confident in your sewing. Just remember, like I've stated in the video, go slow, take your time, have fun with it, and the more that you make, the better you will get, the more confident you will get in your sewing ability. And don't forget, it's just a project bag. It's for you. So enjoy the journey. I filmed that video at the end of a very long work day, so I hope that I made sense. There were some parts that I was tongue-tied possibly, and it may be a little bit confusing, but hopefully I clear that up later in the video. And I think that's it. So good luck, have fun, and thank you for joining me. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask, and I will try my best to answer all those questions. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Suzette. My channel name is The Primitive Stitcher. And in today's video, we are going to make project bags. Before we get started on our supply list, I did want to say a couple of things about these project bags. I think I first showed one of my first project bags back possibly when I was doing the coffee Quaker style, and I believe it was in that video that I mentioned that I had made the project bag and that I had found a tutorial online that I had modified. I did not bring my original project bag with me, but the original tutorial made well, they called it a zippered pouch, and it was very small, but I got that tutorial from the website Craftsy, and the name of the tutorial is called Bag Making Basics with Kristin Link, Kristinlink, and it's to make the reversible tote and zippered pouch. And this is what the zippered pouch looks like. And this is a free tutorial on Craftsy. I liked the concept of this small pouch, but I wanted to make it bigger and make it my own to suit my personal needs for my cross-stitch projects as well as my knitting projects. So I will put this information in the box below so that if you want to go take a look at this tutorial, it's both a written tutorial and a video tutorial on, again, it's from Craftsy. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to say is thank you all for your interest in my project bags. I had so many comments asking me if I would do a tutorial, both in comments below my videos as well as private messages. And it's not that I don't want to share how I made them, because I'm always happy to share anything that I do. What was holding me back was the fact that there are several people who make FlossTube videos who sell project bags, and I by no means want to take any business away from those individuals. I like to support small businesses as much as I can, but the number of project bags that I personally feel like I need, I can't afford to buy that many project bags when I know how to sew and can make them. So I don't want to step on anyone's toes by showing you this tutorial of how I made my project bags. But then I thought, well, there are other tutorials online that are free. So, and I had so many requests. I just felt like I want to share with my viewers what they're asking for. So with that in mind, I'm gonna show you how I make my project bags using Kristen Link's tutorial with major modifications. So before I give you a list of what you need, I do want to try to give you a little bit more in-depth look at the project bag that I'm going to be making today. This is roughly, I believe, 13 inches wide by 12 inches deep. So 13 inches across by 12 inches deep. It has a zipper, and it is fully lined with all seams enclosed. And I will actually turn it inside out so you can see there are no exposed seams. The zipper is fully encased, and I have a loose thread there that we can pull off. Okay, so if you are a new sewer with very little experience, there's nothing but straight line sewing in this. Even with the zipper, it's straight. So I think with a little bit of practice, someone who is a beginning sewer can make this. But I want you all to remember, these are project bags. We are stitchers. We are not neurosurgeons. We are making project bags to put our things in. They don't have to be perfect. And I'll probably remind you that we are not doing brain surgery. We are sewing. It's okay if the seam isn't perfectly straight. No one's life is depending on how we make these. So just go easy on yourself. Take your time. Make a few. I promise you, the more you make, the more comfortable you will become in your ability. So, and have fun. Most importantly, have fun. And at the end of it, you'll have something nice to keep your projects in. Okay, with all that being said, I will now tell you, oh, I want to show you also, sorry, back up a moment. So this size project bag will fit a full-size pattern as well as your supplies, and I believe, well, it will definitely fit an 8x8 and most likely an 11x8 Q-snap, a variety of hoop sizes, and there's plenty of room in there. You can still fit much more in there. Okay, so what will you need? Obviously, you're going to need a sewing machine, and you're going to need a sewing machine that has both the ability to have a regular sewing foot on it as well as a zipper foot, and my zipper foot looks like this. So become familiar with what your feet look like, so that you know when we start doing the zipper, you'll know which one to use. You're going to need an iron and an ironing board, as well as something to cut with. Now, I happen to use a self-healing mat, a ruler, and a rotary cutter to cut my fabric. But you don't have to have that. These are easy pieces to cut. You can do it with just scissors and a tape measure or a ruler or a yardstick, and mark on the back side of your fabric, and you'll be good to go. You will also need your fabric. You can mix it up however you want. I am going to have what I'm going to call my main exterior fabric, which would be this for the front and this for the back. You're going to need an accent exterior fabric, and then you're going to need a lining fabric. And on this one, I have the bats. You could make it out of one color of fabric, or you could do the lining the same as the accent fabric, however you want to mix it up. Just for ease of showing and for you knowing what pieces I'm talking about, I am definitely going to use 3 different fabrics. For the exterior fabric on this bag, I am going to be using the Santa fabric. Now, I most always purchase a half a yard of fabric at a time, at least a half a yard, because I never know what I'm going to do with it. If I want to make a project bag, or if I want to make one of the fabric baskets that I've made in the past, I know that a half a yard will be enough to make whatever I choose. For the accent fabric, for the exterior accent fabric, I'm going to be using this green polka dot. Now, I have a half a yard of this, but you could get away with, if you're just using it for the accent fabric, with a 1/4 yard. And then for the lining, you are also going to need, to be safe, a half a yard of that. And I have the red with the snowflake on that for my lining fabric. You are also going to need some fusible interfacing. You can make this bag with the fusible fleece. I would prefer not to do that, just because the fusible fleece costs more than the fusible interfacing, and I don't want that much bulk in my project bags. So I just use fusible fleece. It's by Pellon. It looks like this. I use the midweight, I believe it is, and it's style 931TD. I buy mine at either Joann's or Hobby Lobby.
I think I got this, yes, I got this at Hobby Lobby. It is $3.99 a yard. I used a 40% off coupon, so like I said, it's much more cost effective than the fusible fleece. And you will need a half a yard of this as well. This is optional, but just to make it a little more decorative, you will want some kind of trim. It can be lace, it can be rickrack. I'm going to use this jumbo rickrack, but it could be the thin rickrack or any of the rickrack sizes. It just depends on what look you're going for. Or like I said, you know, you could use lace, pom-poms, whatever you decide goes with your fabric. You're also going to need scissors, a 14-inch zipper to coordinate with your fabrics. I like the polyester zippers. You can use a metal zipper. If you're a beginner, I wouldn't use a metal zipper because you just want to be careful going over the metal zipper with your sewing machine. There's more chance of a needle breaking if you use a metal zipper than the polyester. So 14-inch will work for this bag. You're going to need some coordinating thread to, you know, coordinate with your fabric. You're also going to need, most likely, our handy dandy seam ripper, because we all make mistakes. It's easier to take a seam out with a seam ripper than a pair of scissors. You're going to need sewing pins, and you're also going to need something to push the corners of your bag out. I use a Teflon bone folder. This actually is from my paper crafting days, but it works well in sewing too. If you don't have this, you can use a wooden chopstick. You can even use the end of a paintbrush, but you do not want to use anything as pointy as a sharpened pencil, because that will poke through your fabric and make a mess. Let me see, what else? Oh, there another optional item. I always like to put a pull on my zippers, and I think for this one I'm going to use one of the snowflake charms that I picked up, and I think I also got these at Hobby Lobby in the Christmas department. But you can go to the jewelry making aisle and pick up charms and use those. I've even found some cute Christmas ornaments made out of clay, I think it is, that you can use. It just depends on what size of zipper pull you want. If you do decide to put a zipper pull on, you might need to buy some extra, are these called, jump rings. And I like to attach mine using a lobster claw. That way, if I decide that I don't want it on there, it's just easier to take it off. And that's what let's see if I can, that's what the lobster claw looks like. So it's easy to use this clasp to put it on and take it off as you wish. Those are the optional things that you can do just to make it look a little bit cuter, to suit your style. Okay, I will tell you first off the sizes that you're going to need to cut your fabric. I'm a couple of days later than I wanted to be starting this tutorial because I went into panic mode. I hadn't made one of these bags for a few weeks, and when I'm in the middle of making a whole batch, I can just cut them out, stitch them up so fast. But if I haven't made any for a while, I'm like, oh, how did I do that? And I started to panic that I didn't have my measurements written down correctly. So I went through and I ended up actually making a complete bag so that I could hopefully get all my measurements correct for you. So from the outside main fabric, remember that's going to be this bottom front part and the back. You want to cut one piece that is going to be 14 inches wide by 8 inches long. Now you want to keep in mind, if you have a directional fabric, to cut it 14 wide, 8 long in the right orientation. If it's non-directional, which I think my Santas, let me see, my Santas are directional, meaning they all face the same way. There aren't any upside down Santas. So I want my 14 to be the width and my 8 to be the length. The same goes for the back. You want a 14-inch wide by 13-inch long piece. So I will hold this up for you. You can pause and jot this down, and my drawings are horrible. Don't go by the drawings, go by the numbers listed here on this side. So for the outside fabric, main fabric, this is what you need to cut it at. And I hope you can see that. Let me make sure I hold it up here so that you can see it. So one piece, 14 inches wide by 8 inches deep, and one piece 14 inches wide by 13 inches deep. For the accent fabric pieces, the piece here on top and the lower piece, you want one piece. Again, if it's directional, make sure you pay attention to that. Mine is going to be the green polka dot. I try not to pick this as a directional fabric just because it makes life easier. So the outside accent fabric, you're going to cut one piece 14 inches wide by 2.5 inches long. That's the very top piece. Then you want to cut a piece 14 inches wide by 3.5 inches deep. For your lining, which again, if it's directional, you want to pay attention to that, but if you don't, it's no big deal. It's on the inside of the bag. No one is going to see it. You're the only one that will know. So for your lining fabric, for the front, you are going to cut one piece 14 by 2.5, one piece 14 by 11 inches. That's the front. For the back lining, you're going to cut one piece 14 inches by 13 inches. For the fusible interfacing, basically the fusible interfacing is going to be cut the same sizes as all of your exterior pieces, but I have written it down so that you can write it down as well. So you're going to have one piece 14 by 2.5, one piece 14 by 3.5, one piece 14 by 8, and one piece 14 wide by 13 long. So they're all 14 wide. It's just the length that varies. Okay, so clearly I have not cut my fabric because I wanted to show you, again, if you are a beginning sewer, you may never have purchased a piece of fabric. This is what a half a yard of fabric looks like. Okay, so I am going to pause and cut my fabric. I'll come back and we will get started. See you in a little bit. Before we continue, I wanted to show you the zippered pouch that I made from Kristen Link's tutorial. This is the size of it. Again, it is zippered and it has it's fully lined. This one has a tab. I chose not to put the tabs on my project bags. So let me show you the size difference between the original tutorial and my bag. Okay. Now, did I happen to mention that I'm not a professional? And I already have a correction. When I was talking about the fusible fleece, I said you need a half a yard of this. I forgot that fusible fleece, I'm sorry, that was the other correction. I think I mentioned my fusible fleece. This is fusible interfacing. I am not using fusible fleece. You can use fusible fleece. Fusible interfacing is only 20 inches wide and it is single layered. So you will need more than a half a yard. You're going to need, I would just go ahead and buy a full yard. That way, if you make a mistake in cutting, you can still have plenty to cut the correct pieces. Okay? So, a full yard of this, a half a yard of the main fabric, a half a yard of the lining fabric, and a quarter yard of the accent fabric. Okay? The other thing I wanted to mention when I talked about if you don't have a self-healing mat and a rotary cutter, you can draw on the back of your fabric and cut it out that way. I realize that if you have never sewn before, you may not have understood what I was talking about. This is the right side of our fabric. This is the wrong side of our fabric. I just took a relatively blunt tipped pencil. I took my ruler and I drew on the back side of my fabric. That's going to be your cutting line. Even if you marked all over the back of this, it's not going to matter. We're not most likely going to be washing these, and it's pencil lead. It probably won't come out, but all this is going to be on the inside of your bag and no one is ever going to see it. Okay, I wouldn't use a permanent marker. I probably wouldn't even use an ink pen. I would use a blunt tipped pencil and draw your cutting lines on the back side of your fabric. Okay, so I have cut my pieces of fabric. Let me see if I can hold this up and show you all at once. So I have my 2.5 inch piece of accent fabric, my 3.5 inch piece of accent fabric, my 14 by 8 piece of main fabric, and then I have my 14 across by 13 down back exterior main fabric. Then for my lining, I have my 2.5 by 14 inch piece, my 14 by 11, 14 across by 11 down piece of lining fabric, and my 14 across by 13 down lining fabric. And then I have all of my fusible interfacing pieces, 14 by 2.5, 14 by 3.5, 14 by 8, and 14 by 13. Again, I'm going to try to base this tutorial for beginning sewers. I am not a professional. I can't stress that enough. So I wouldn't even know how to do a professional sewing video. But I can really relate to beginning sewers. Even though I've been sewing for a long time, I was pretty much self-taught, and my mom did some sewing. So I'm going to explain fusible interfacing has two distinct sides. There's a smooth side, and then there's a side that is slightly bumpy. The bumpy side has the glue. You want the bumpy side to the wrong side of your fabric, and you're just going to follow the manufacturer's directions on how to adhere this with your iron. Some brands say to use a steam iron, some do not. So just follow whatever your manufacturer says. So what the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take and match up all of our exterior pieces with our fusible interfacing, placing the glue side, the bumpy side of the interfacing, to the wrong side of your fabrics. Okay, so there we have the 3.5 inch piece. The 2.5 inch by 14 piece. The 14 by 8 inch piece. And the 14 by 13 inch piece. Again, making sure you have the bumpy side of the interfacing to the wrong side of the fabric. And we're going to take that to the ironing board, and I don't think I need to show you that portion. Just follow your manufacturer directions, okay, of the interfacing, and iron those pieces all together. We are going to set the lining pieces aside for now. Okay, hopefully I am going to be able to show this as if you are standing behind me and can watch exactly what I'm doing, rather than have you looking at me face on. So I'm going to take my 14.5 by 8 inch piece of my front that has my interfacing
ironed on. I'm going to take the right side of that, and I'm going to take my 14 by 3.5 inch piece of accent fabric. That also has the interfacing on. I'm going to place those right sides together, matching up the ends as best as possible. If your cutting is slightly off, match up one end, and then we can trim down the long end. I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to take and place a couple of pins in here. So I'm matching up my sides as well as my top edges. I will be stitching today with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. That means my stitching line will be a 1/4 inch from this edge. I will try to keep my hands out of the way. Okay. On these particular seams, you do not need to reverse stitch, but I do like to have my needle down, meaning when I stop my machine, the needle is going to be down in the fabric. All right. So I'm stitching the lower portion of the front to the middle section of the front. Making sure that I keep those edges aligned with one another. Raise my needle, trim off my threads, open it up, and this is what we have. Again, if you have a directional fabric, you want to make sure that Santa's not upside down. Okay? I'm going to now go and press this back seam toward, I think the darker fabric is the green. I'm gonna press it. I'm not gonna press it open. I'm gonna press it up. Okay, so I've pressed it so that I have a nice flat seam there. When I said that I was pressing it up, I'm pressing it up toward the green, not open. Although you can press it open if you would like. I just think it creates a stronger seam if it's pressed in one direction or the other. That's what we do in quilting, and that's just what I'm accustomed to. So we have the first part of our front. This is where, if you choose to put some trim in, you can either, before you stitch these two pieces together, encase it in that seam, but I like to just lay it on top of the seam. I'm going to not have precise measurements. I'm just going to lay it across there, see how much I want, and trim that off. Which direction are we going in here? Okay, makes sense? I'm going to try to get it as straight as possible and do a couple of pins to hold it. Again, kind of lining it up with that seam. So this is what we have. I'm going to pull my machine back over. Line it up, and I want to try to stitch as much in the middle of this as I possibly can. But again, this is not brain surgery. If it's crooked, we can live. What I do try to do is find a spot on my machine, and my machine has a ruler across here. So if I have this piece relatively straight on my fabric, I can then choose a spot on my ruler to guide this edge, which means this, as I stitch it, will be straight, hopefully. Okay, so let's try that. Again, I'm going to put my needle down. Make sure I don't run over the pins. And just go slow and take your time. And if you use, a thread that's the same color as your rickrack or your trim, then even if you're off just slightly, it's not going to be as noticeable. So there we have our trim. Okay, now comes the part that some of you may worry about. We're going to get the zipper out. I'm just going to move that aside for a moment. Now, I said that you need a 14-inch zipper for this. The only white zipper that I happen to have is a 16-inch zipper, but I will show you how you can make that work. For this, we're going to need the piece we just stitched on. We are also going to need our front lining piece, which happens to be the 14 by 11-inch piece. Okay, and we're going to make a sandwich. Our goal is to have the zipper come up like this, right? So we're going to open the zipper slightly to start off with. Let me think on this for a second, because we are going to take our outside piece and lay it face up. We're going to take our zipper slightly opened and lay it with the pull piece facing the right side of the fabric. Now, as I mentioned, I'm using 1/4-inch seams. So this little metal stop on the zipper needs to be to the right-hand side of where the seam is going to be, just slightly. So I'm going to extend the end of the zipper out beyond my fabric by about 1/4 of an inch. Okay, maybe this will, so when we sew the side seams, get that a little straighter for you. When we sew the side seam, our seam is going to be about right here.
1/4 of an inch is going to be about right here. Okay? So we are just going to take and do a few pins along this edge of the zipper. I will show you a better look at it after I get it pinned. I'm matching the edge of the zipper with the top edge of my accent fabric. Okay? And we will make a few adjustments as we go along because we're not finished pinning. Right side of the zipper to the right side of the fabric. So the zipper pull is on the inside. We have it open slightly. You want your pull to stick out like that. Now we're going to take our lining fabric. We're going to take the 14-inch edge and we are going to make a sandwich with our outside fabric, our lining fabric, and our zippers on the inside. We are going to again match the edges of the side of the fabric and the top of the fabrics together. We're going to use another pin and pin that. And we're just going to work our way down the zipper edge, top. Okay, I am going to now take the first pins that out that I put in, the first pins that I put in out, and repin all 3 layers. Does that make sense? I have my lining fabric, my zipper, and my accent fabric top here. I'm going to do that all the way down. And this may seem a bit fiddly, but it's worth it in the end to get it right the first time. But trust me, I have sewn and taken out so many zippers multiple times to try to get it right. Again, we are matching up the top edges of the fabric, the side edges of the fabric. This doesn't matter, we're not pinning the sides, but we do want them to be even with one another. And there's our rickrack trim sticking out. This is probably the part that takes the longest, is the pinning. So I'm pulling out the original pins that I put in so that I can catch all 3 pieces. The zipper in the middle, the lining on the top, and the accent fabric and lower piece on the back. Okay, I am going to switch my zipper foot. Get this. And let me see if I can get you closer to that so you can see. This is going to be probably the most difficult part to see. I always forget I can't use my differential feed with my zipper foot. And for those of you, a differential feed makes the top layer of fabric and the bottom layer of fabric go through the machine at the same rate. Okay, so our goal, let's see, sorry for the wobbliness, but I'm trying to get you. If you can see, my needle is on the left side of my zipper foot. I want this part of my zipper foot to be as close to the teeth of the zipper as possible. So I am going to lay it in there, and I'm going to use my finger to feel where the teeth of that zipper are. Okay, I hope this is making sense, and I hope you can see. You can feel it. There's a ridge there. Those are the one side of the zipper's teeth. Okay, so we want this side of your zipper foot to be as close to those teeth as possible without running over the teeth. Okay? And it's important that I show you this part because when we get down to where the pole is, that's where a lot of people have trouble. Let me see if this makes a difference. I'm hoping, I don't know, is it washing it out? The light on my machine, even though it's showing up bright here, is not as bright as what it's showing up, but I can't tell. Let's hope. Okay, so I've lowered my presser foot, which happens to be the zipper foot. I'm going to put my needle down because I'm going to have to stop. So if you don't have an automatic needle down, when you stop, make sure that you turn your, oh, I've forgotten what this part is called the hand wheel over on the side of your machine. Make sure that you put the needle down in the fabric when you stop before you lift the presser foot. But I happen to have a machine that automatically does that for me. Okay, so I'm going to pull the first pin out and I'm going to start sewing. And I'm going to have, I'm going to have my hands right here feeling for those zipper teeth. Or at least my left hand guiding along. And this, we're going to go slow-ish, keeping this part of my presser foot against the teeth, which are running right along here. Okay? And we're just going to take it nice and slow. Now we're coming up. You see this big bump right here? That's the zipper pull. We're coming up on that. I'm going to take a few more stitches. My needle is down into the fabric. I'm going to lift my presser foot. And I'm going to lift this fabric up, the lining fabric up. I'm going, can you see the zipper pull there? I'm going to reach in and zip it back up so that that zipper pull is now out of my way. Okay? I'm going to lower my presser foot and I'm going to continue to stitch, having my presser foot alongside the zipper teeth. Stopping occasionally to pull out a pin. Oops, extra one came out. repin that one. I'm trying to make sure that my three pieces, my lining, my front, and my zipper are all, the edges are all lined up here as I sew. I'm going much slower with this so I can show you guys than what I normally do. As you do more, you get more comfortable with it. Now you can see I have some excess here. I knew I was going to because this didn't line up. So I'm going to unpin it, I'm going to pull it flat and repin it here at the end. The reason I had that is because the zipper pull needed excess fabric in that area, and it took it, but now we've lined it back up. As you stitch, you will understand more what I'm talking about. Okay, so we've reached the end. I have excess here because my zipper is longer than I need. Move this out of the way. Now, the moment of truth. We lift up our lining fabric, we lift up our zipper, and now one side of our zipper is encased between the lining and the front of the fabric. What we do now is we take it to the iron if we're happy with it. If the space between your fabric and your zipper teeth, if that space is not even all the way down the zipper, you can go back and restitch that area. Okay, you can go back and get your zipper foot closer to the teeth if there are areas that are too wide. I was hoping there would be so I could show you that, but I'm pretty pleased with the space between my fabric and my zipper teeth. You don't want it right up next to it because then you take the chance of your fabric getting caught in your zipper as you're zipping and unzipping it. Okay, so I'm going to go press this and show you what it looks like after we press. I'm going to press on the back side and on the front. Okay, be right back. Okay, so I watched that last part of the video back, and in an effort to explain this a little bit better for someone who has never sewn a zipper or who has trouble sewing a zipper, I'm going to put this little clip in. So this is our zipper. We took the right side of our zipper and placed it against the right side of our accent piece. Then we opened it up, right? And we want the pull to be up like that. So that's the right side of our zipper. We took the right side of our lining and we want that facing the right side of the front of our bag. Okay? And that's where, oh guys, I do apologize for bumping the camera, but I think this is an important part for you to see. So this is where I went in and I showed you that I had first pinned the zipper to the front of the bag piece, and then I placed more pins along the edge all the way down. Okay? What I have done is I've taken a pencil and I have gone along and felt the teeth of that side of the zipper.
This is my zipper foot. I want this edge of my zipper foot to be as close to those teeth without being on top of the teeth as possible. My needle, let's pretend this is my needle. My needle is going to be right here, going down on this left side of the zipper foot. Okay, these are my stitching lines. That's my stitching line right here. This dark line is the edge of the teeth, the zipper teeth. So I stitched along here. I continued stitching down, having the edge of my zipper foot as close to the teeth as possible. This bump right here is the zipper pull. If I try to go around this zipper pull, the zipper pull is going to force the presser foot out, and we're not going to have a straight stitching line. So when I get up to about here, there's my pull. I'm going to put my needle down into my fabric. I'm going to lift this piece of the fabric up. I'm going to reach in and re-zip the zipper. I'm going to put the lining piece of the fabric back down. Now that zipper pull is up here, it's out of our way. We can continue stitching all the way down to the other end of the zipper. Okay, I hope that makes more sense. I realized that it was very difficult to see as I was stitching. So I will show you. Okay, we stitched all the way along here, all the way down to this end. I then opened it up. I took it to my iron. I pressed the lining piece away from the teeth. I pressed, then I took it, I folded it over so that I have my outer piece, and I pressed this piece of fabric down so we have a nice flat seam. What I was talking about, the space between the fabric and the zipper teeth, is this space right along in here. I'm pretty happy with that space. It's not exact, no big deal. It's pretty close, okay? So we're going to do the same thing on this side with our lining fabric that's 2.5 by 14 inches long, 2.5 inches by 14 inches, and our accent fabric. This is the top of our bag. We want the zipper encased between these two pieces. In an effort to do that, we're going to again unzip it a ways. We are going to lay our accent fabric face down. We're going to match up these edges. And this edge of our zipper. And we're going to pin. We're going to do that all the way down. Then we're going to come back and we are going to place our lining fabric right side up. Okay, let me just put a couple more pins in here. ways as well. Then we're going to come back and we're going to do basically the same thing on this one that we did on the other side of the zipper. We're going to line the top edges, making a sandwich. We have our lining fabric, we have our zipper, and we have our accent fabric all together. And we're going to put a pin through all 3 layers. And we're going to do that all the way down again. This is not as difficult when I'm doing it on a flat surface, not trying to work around the camera tripod. Okay, so look there, see how that's gapping? You don't want that. I need to take that pin out and make sure that, let me do this, and make sure that they are all laying flat to one another. Like so. Then I can come back and I can pull that first pin out that I put in and pick up all 3 layers instead of just 2. Okay, and if you have to adjust, see there's a gap there too. I need to adjust that. So there are no gaps. You want them to be flat to one another. Okay, so I'm going to pin that and I'll be right back. Okay, so we have pretty successfully pinned our zipper and our fabric pieces together. We have them lined up very well on this end. It's slightly off on this end. Not to worry, even if it after we get it sewn, if it's still off a little bit, we can fix that. This is what the front of it looks like. This is what the back of it looks like. Okay, let me see if I can open this up a little bit and show you what it looks like on the inside. So let me just put that pin like that. So we have our sandwich, we have our lining, we have our zipper, and we have our accent fabric. We're going to put the pole up like that. And because this is pinned, you can't really see in there, but you can kind of see at the end here. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say we have a zipper sandwich. Okay, let me see if I can get a better view of when I'm stitching it. And again, I am going to try to keep my zipper foot. Let's pretend this fabric is down, but I'm going to try to keep my zipper foot as close to those teeth, the left side of my zipper foot, as close to those teeth as possible, because my needle I need another hand. So we're pretending that the green fabric is covering this. My needle is going to be going in right here. Okay, so there's going to be plenty of
of space between where the fabric, two pieces of fabric are sewn to the zipper and the zipper teeth, so as not to get the fabric caught into the zipper. But again, we want to keep that zipper foot as close to the teeth as possible without going on top of the feet. Okay, so let me see if I can get it set up so maybe you can see how I sew it a little bit better. Oh my goodness, I think I have it sorted out. Maybe if I can keep my hands off the tripod and give you guys motion sickness. Okay, so what I have done is I have taken my pencil right here, this dark line. That's my zipper feet. I'm sorry, my zipper teeth right there. I'm keeping the edge of this presser foot, also known as the zipper foot, as close to this line as possible without going over and without straying too far out here. Okay, I want to keep a straight seam line right here. So I'm just going to take my finger. Actually, what I normally do is I have a finger on either side of that zipper teeth, those zipper teeth, and I guide my fabric in, going slow so I don't run over my finger with the needle, and so I can pull the pins out. But that's how I can most of the time guarantee that I have a straight seam along my zipper. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull this pin out, and we're going to start. And as I watched that video back, that last clip, I realized how loud my machine is. It is in desperate need still of servicing, but ain't nobody got time for that. Got too many project bags to make, right? Okay, ready, set, let's go. Right here, that lump right there is the zipper pull. We're going to continue to stitch as close to it as we can get without it distorting our seam line. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. My needle is down in the fabric. I'm going to lift my presser foot. I'm going to reach in under here, and I usually don't look at it, but I'm going to reach in. I usually just do it by feel, and I'm going to zip that zipper pull up out of the way. Put my presser foot back down, and now I didn't carry the line on down, so I'm going to have to go by feel. See what I mean when I say I can feel it right there? And I just continue all the way down. Do you see this little pucker happening? Partially because, like I mentioned before, the zipper pull took up some of this fabric. The other reason is because my differential feed, I'm not being able to use that with the zipper foot. When I can use it, it feeds the top fabric at the same rate as the bottom fabric. The feed dogs are feeding the bottom fabric through. The differential feed feeds the fabric through at the same rate that the feed dogs feed it through. But without it, you kind of have that that pucker, but we'll just we'll make sure that we keep moving that excess fabric on the top down as we stitch, so that it does end up being a flat seam as we or when we get to the end. Okay, so now we're... Okay, would you believe that my storage was full? Okay, so we're getting here down to the end, and I'm just going to continue, and I've made that flat. Remember, it kind of puckered up like that. I just let it go down, and we're going to continue stitching all the way down. And here you can kind of see, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stitch down here and show you what it looks like. This is where we want. We've got the teeth right up against the edge of your zipper foot. Okay, makes sense? I hope now. Okay. Now I'm going to raise that up, take this off, try to slide that back. We're gonna, the moment of truth, see if I can get as much of this in this shot so I can keep this on one clip. This is the outside of our bag, right? We have the proper side of the fabric showing. We're going to turn it over. This is our lining. This is the inside of our bag, the inside of our zipper. I'm going to take it to the iron. I'm going to press that down from this side. I'm also going to turn it over and press it down from this side so that we can then top stitch along these edges here and here. I'm also going to switch the thread in my machine to match this. You can do matching thread, or you can do a coordinating thread. You could do red or white in this case, but I'm just going to go ahead and try to do a green that matches. Okay, so we have it nice and lined up on this side. Not as nice on this side. The top part is, but here we have a little excess. No worries, we'll take care of that. Okay, so I can't stress enough how important it is to press your pieces as you go along. It does make them look a little bit nicer as you're stitching. It takes a little bit of extra time, but I feel like the payoff in the end of having everything nice and squared up and just a little bit nicer look to it if you press along the way. Whoops. I want to show you guys something. Low battery. I'm going to try to get through this and show you this, then I'll have to charge my phone. This is not perfectly even. Do I care? No, it's close enough. I'm not going to sweat it. We can live, right? Don't worry about it if yours is not perfectly even. So what? Just be proud that you made something that you can use. So what we're going to do next is we're going to top stitch along this side and along this side so that our fabric doesn't accidentally bunch up and get into our zipper, get stuck in our zipper. Let me try to pull this forward again. And I may only be able to show you one side before my battery dies. If so, you just repeat the same on the other side. I keep my zipper foot on for this. I've never actually attempted to do it any other way. So what I'm going to do is keep this inside edge of that foot along the outside edge of this fabric. Okay? I 99% of the time I sew with my needle down feature on. But I wanted to show you this because we handle the zipper pull in much the same way as before. We're going to needle down into the fabric, lift our presser foot up, slide our zipper pull back behind your presser foot, lower your presser foot, and continue stitching until the end. Okay, I'm going to zip it back up. I will show you the result of that. Basically, we just top stitch that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch this side here. I'm going to plug my phone in, get it charged back up, and finish this tutorial hopefully later tonight. I have recharged my phone, at least partially, and I have recharged my body. While my phone was charging, I had some dinner, and I really am hoping to get this tutorial finished up tonight so I can upload it tomorrow. So we have the front piece finished, but I wanted to address the fact that these edges are not quite even. This side looks pretty good. This side, however, needs some trimming up. So you can either take your scissors and very carefully trim that excess off, or you can take a ruler and a rotary cutter, making sure to line it up nicely and trim it off that way. Now I'm not going to take the rotary cutter up to my zipper because I'm not going to cut the zipper off yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and snip that off. We have lined it up with the top portion that is nice and straight, and this is not going to affect it too much. Okay, so our next step is to move this aside. We are going to lay down our lining fabric with the 14-inch piece going this way and the 13-inch going up and down. So 14 across, 13 down. We are going to take the piece that we have sewn and we're going to lay that on top, matching the right side of the back lining to the right side of the front lining. Then we are going to take
the 14-inch across and 13-inch down piece of outer fabric for the back, and we're going to lay that on top of the front piece. So in all situations, we have right sides together, right sides of the lining together, and right sides of the outer pieces together. What we want to do now, okay, again, if you have directional fabric, you want to make sure that you have this orientated the right way. If I were to turn this over, once we stitch it, okay, we're going to stitch it at the top, then Santa would be upside down, right? Santa's going this way on the front, and he would be going upside down on the back. So we do want to make sure that we have it oriented in the right direction. We're going to match our sides. And our top pieces. Our top edge, I should say, with all three pieces. I will put a pin in it this way so you can see. Okay, so we have our back exterior fabric. We have our front exterior fabric. Attached to our front exterior fabric is our front lining piece right here, and then we have our back lining piece. So we are going to pin, matching up the raw edges of each piece. Essentially we have three pieces. We have the sandwich that we stitched together with the zipper in it. That's in the middle. On the top we have the exterior back, and on the bottom we have the back lining. So we are just pinning those together, matching the top edge and the side edges of each side. Like so. Okay, and we are going to take and we are going to stitch. I'm using a 1/4 inch seam right across all layers of the top. I will do that and bring it back to show you. So once we have stitched that top seam together, it's going to look like this. What I have gone ahead and done is to press that seam so the inside looks like this. I'm going to open up the lining just to make sure that we have everything going in the right direction. So our lining pieces are right sides together. I'm going to fold that over. And we have something that looks like this. Okay, now I always have a little excess on the front lower section because I can never guesstimate how much space my zipper is going to take up. So if I turn this over and you look down here, this is the front, this is obviously the back,
and this is the front. So if I lay these together nicely, they don't quite match up because the zipper in the front makes it just a wee bit longer than our back section. I hope that makes sense. So I'm just going to go ahead and trim these up evenly, and I'll be back to show you what our next step is.
I thought I could best show you from this direction of what we need to do next. We are going to open our zipper up about halfway. Then we are going to take, going to take our outer fabric, front, our outer fabric back. We are going to pin those together. Matching the bottom edges. This is going to be the bottom of our bag. And then we are going to stitch from this edge all the way to this edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. On this, I do like to use a back stitch in the beginning and a back stitch at the end. So here we go. Oh, hang on. Don't have my differential feet on. Okay, now here we go. I'm going to leave that in to show you everybody has issues, even me. It just got a little caught up there. We're going to pull that out. I left my scissors over on the other side, and we're going to start fresh. Again, back stitching and stitching a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we're going to back stitch here. So this is what we end up with. Our exterior pieces are stitched together. Now we're going to take our lining pieces. We're going to line up the bottom edges and pin those. I'm placing a pin, one pin at each end. And I don't measure this, I just kind of eyeball it. You want to leave an opening about 4 inches. So we're going to stitch from this edge to this pin, back stitch, stop. We're going to start stitching again at the 3rd pin and stitch all the way to the end, back stitching both at the beginning of that seam and at the end. Okay?
We're going to back stitch here. Cut our threads, restart stitching about here. It doesn't have to be an exact 4-inch. You need to have it enough that you can get your hand in there for turning. And we're going to back stitch at this edge. Now, this might be a confusing part to some people. Let me move this over so I can show you. What we want to do we still have it unzipped on the inside. This piece that you see right here, this is the top accent fabric of our bag. So you want to fold the bag, okay, maybe best is just to hold on to the very top of the bag. So you have your top accent piece here, your back exterior here, and your 2 linings here. Because what we're going to do is we are going to stitch all the way across the side. We're not going to cut this part of the zipper off yet. Okay? So I'm going to just flip it over and put a couple of pins in. When I'm doing this, not on video, I usually do not pin this section just because it's straight stitching, and I do stop and make sure that everything is where it needs to be. Okay, pull the machine back over. So it should look like this. This is the lining, the two linings, the 2 exterior pieces put together. I may do just slightly more than a 1/4 inch for this, in case my edges aren't quite, my edges of all 4 pieces are not quite exact. And all 4 pieces, I mean the 2 linings and the 2 exteriors, they may not be quite exact. Again, I'm going to back stitch in the beginning and at the end. I'm going to go very slowly over the zipper. I've just, now I can feel I'm going over the rickrack trim, and I continue on down the edge of the bag. Until I get to the bottom, I'm going to back stitch and cut my threads. So it's going to look like this. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, but on this side the zipper's open, so you want to make sure that when you pin it that you have those zipper pieces, and they normally will automatically fall together, but you just might want to keep an eye on that. Okay, I'm actually going to turn it over this way and stitch on this side. You might want to put an extra pin in that area to remind you, hey, I need to make sure those 2 pieces are flush with one another. thread's going in the right direction here. Again, I'm doing just slightly more than 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to slow down when I get to that zipper. Going over the rickrack. And continuing on down to the bottom. Okay, let me go get my scissors because I need to trim all the little threads off, which is also, apart from pressing, that is something that I am a fanatic about, is trimming up all your thread ends. At this stage, I'm going to take and trim off the end of that little zipper pieces. We don't need those anymore. On this end of the zipper, even with the 14-inch zipper, you probably will have a little bit hanging over. You can leave it. I would trim it off. I don't like to use my good sharp sewing scissors for this. Use an old pair to cut through that nylon teeth, I have a pair of Tim Holtz Tonic Studio scissors that cut through just about anything and never get dull. So that we just throw away. You can also take and cut off the ends of your trim or your rickrack, pull out any stray threads from your fabric that got caught in there. And now, guys, we are nearing completion. We have one more thing to stitch, but before we turn it right side out, we're going to take and very carefully clip off the corners at an angle, making sure not to cut into our stitching. I'll show you again on this side. It might be easier to see on this side because part of the thread here is red on this side, so you can see I'm just trimming close but not getting into the stitching. You're going to do that on all four corners very carefully. I want to get my turning tools, or not my turning, my pokey tools ready, because what we are going to do is go into the bottom lining section where we left that opening. We're going to reach our hand in and we're going to start pulling it right side out. You're like, oh my gosh, how's this gonna work? It works. Okay, so At this stage, I do like to take my bone folder, my chopstick, the end of my paintbrush, and I like to start pushing the corners out. The corners of the lining and the corners of at the top, it's both corners of the lining and the outer fabric. At the bottom, it's the corners of the lining. And this is fiddly, just work with it. We're gonna do some more on the corners after we get the right side out. This is the lining. This is the right side of the lining. So now the reason we unzipped the zipper is so that we can reach in and unzip it the rest of the way and start turning our bag completely right side out. Working the corners kind of as we go. See, we still have that opening. We're going to come back to that. I like to just take my finger and push the corners out as much as I can with my finger. Flatten it out, see where we are, zip it up, take a look at it, see what else we need to do with the corners. See, they're very not pointy, quite rounded corners. So in an effort to get them pushed out as much as possible, we're going to open this back up. We are going to take our tool, whatever it is, whether it's the end of a paintbrush, a chopstick, or if you have something like this, you can use it as well. And we're going to reach down in here and we're going to reach back through the lining bottom, the hole at the bottom. And we're going to start working these corners. And this takes a little bit of time depending on, you know, how much time and effort you want to put into it. Again, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is a project bag. It is what it is, and you don't have to be perfect. But as you do more and more, you will figure out how to get them a little bit nicer than the beginning ones. So I hope you can see how I am just manipulating that fabric to get it out into the corner a little bit more. For the top corners, again, you know, reach back through there and up to the top corners and do the same thing. Just, you want to be firm with it, but not too firm, because you'd always risk ripping the seam out, which if you do that, you just turn it back inside out and stitch a deeper seam, or, you know, wider seam to close that back up, and then push the corners back out just a little more careful the next time. But if you try to do this with a pencil, a sharpened pencil, it's gonna poke through there and create a hole, and you don't want that. So let's tuck our lining back in nicely. We can zip it back up again. And when you are happy with the way your corners look, you can take it and press it. But before we do that, actually, before we take it and press it, what you need to do, I see a thread there that I want to clip off quickly. We're going to stitch that opening in the lining closed.
But I think I want to play around with this corner just a little bit more before I do that. So we're going to reach in, we're going to pull the lining back out, and I suppose you could not sew it closed, but you do run the risk of, you know, if you put scissors down in here, of them getting caught between the lining and the bag. So you're just going to fold over an edge, and I finger press it and fold over this edge and finger press that. So there's our opening, right? We're just gonna close it up. I do pin this because it can shift on you easily when you're sewing it. You can hand sew this closed just with a whip stitch, but if I'm in a hand stitch right now, I want it to be cross stitching. I don't want it to be on something that's on the inside of a bag that no one ever sees. So I just stitch it on my machine. Okay, so we have it like that. We want to make sure that we don't have any of this caught up in here when we sew it on the machine. So you want to make sure that it's free and you're only stitching along this edge to close it up, which we will do right now. And this definitely does not have to be perfect because it's on the inside and no one will see it, because your bag is going to have a beautiful project in it that you're stitching on, and you don't care what it looks like down there on that bottom seam. All you care about is it's holding a great project that I'm going to work on in my free time. Back stitch for that. Trim our threads off. Trim these threads off. And now it's closed. And you just want to push that back down in. Take your fingers and press your corners back out. Zip it up. Oh, I didn't press the... Here is a tip. If you can't, if when you have stitched that seam in the lining closed and you can't get your corners pressed back out exactly like you want, you can very carefully, let me see if I can, you can very carefully take a pen, a stronger pen, and manipulate that fabric by gently pulling it out. And that also works on if you do like any pin pillows, pin keeps on the corners. If somehow they slip back to not being what you wanted them to be, but you do have to be gentle with that and take your time. Okay, folks, so there you go. There is our project bag tutorial. I will come back and do a face-to-face finale before I put all these clips together and upload it. So I hope that was something that you can understand. If you have any questions, if there's anything I can help you with, please don't hesitate to ask. And I will, like I said, I will do, now that I've finished the bag, I will go back and probably put another clip at the beginning of the tutorial, which if you've made it this far, you've already seen that. All right. Thank you very much, and I hope that you enjoy making a project bag. Bye for now.